Okay, welcome, Elisha. Thank you so much for being with me on a Friday night. We clearly have a big social life, eh?
Apparently so.
I cancel all plans with friends, pour a glass of wine, and hang out with my new podcast friends instead these days.
It's definitely the way to do it. I do the same.
Maybe if I actually hang out with my friends on Friday night, maybe I'll record those get-togethers and maybe use that as an episode. Two birds, one stone, right?
Better than idea.
Oh my God. Well, everyone, we have Elisha, and I'm really excited about the types of conversations we'll have. I feel the type of listenership that I have so far are very career oriented, and the stuff that we may lead into talking about while we're on this call might pique some people's interest tonight. So let me introduce you to Elisha. The bio will not do her justice. So after I give her a little teaser on who she is, then Elisha, you'll do a better job explaining who you are. So Elisha is the director and founder of EAG Innovation. And what that is, it's a mental health service geared to families. As a lived experience service provider and advocate with a passion for enhancing understanding about mental health and its effects, they have brought to life three key elements in the course of their work. One, lived experience is evidence, building safer communities, and equitable health access for all. In addition, Elisha puts the value of their lived experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and atypical anorexia nervosa to support and advocate for others with shared experiences. They are a leader and a consultant with various communities who demonstrates caring and passionate involvement. Elisha, you work with a really cool organization. So tell me what you actually do within the organization.
Yeah, so I am the founder of EAG Innovation, which has been such an incredible journey, especially growing our team. We're now been open since February 2020. We're now an awesome team of three and growing. So my role is I am the one who is not only doing all that behind the scenes work, so everything from marketing, branding, planning ahead, doing all that lovely curriculum development. I'm also the face. So I'm also the one seeing clients on a day-to-day basis, helping support them and meet their needs as a family and as a collective. So typically, you'll most often find me on the phone face-to-face, client. Also, you'll find me doing that behind the scenes work in all kinds of facets, developing curriculum and creating some really awesome workshops and events to help support families.
So what you're telling me, the role of a founder and entrepreneur is not as beautiful as Instagram seems to tell us, hey?
Oh, no, far from it.
So tell me what a typical day looks like. So tell me kind of what you did today within your organization.
So today, when I woke up this morning, the first thing I did was emails. Before I did anything else, there was about 30 or 40 in the inbox, which is always fun to wake up to. And that's the first thing I do before I even get to breakfast. So I'll get to breakfast, and then straight from there, I'm typically hopping on to reply to some more emails, working on social media. Today, I was working on a virtual fall market that we're going to be participating in, creative expression session. I was also working on some conferences that I'm consulting on. So I have two that are coming up. So a lot of data work, a lot of things that most people get a VA for, but when you're a new business or you're starting off, those things aren't always a feasible opportunity. Then I usually take from there a couple of calls, another filming for my podcast. From there, I had a quick little break and then went on to see clients in the afternoon, working on a case study and research that I'm performing as well. Another podcast recording for my podcast, and more of the consulting work in the afternoon, and then a dinner break and studying because I'm currently working on a child mental health certificate, and then this. So yeah, my days are long.
And Elisha, just what I said at the beginning, this is why we spend our Friday nights podcasting.
Exactly.
Do you eat? Do you sleep? Do you do any of those things?
do. They're just not significant in my day. They're things I do because it's part of my self-care routine. I know it might not be the same time every day. It might not be the same amount of sleep. It might not be the same time period for meals, but they're still there. They still exist within my day. Um,
I know. I'm just teasing.
yeah.
So all that being said, your day sounded full, and you seem very blessed in the type of role you're in. You seem very joyful, full of life.
Yeah. I love it. So much
One
better.
quick one quick question that I have for you that I like to ask a lot of my guests is, given that it's Friday, what was your high and low of the week?
Ooh. Hmm. My high of the week was definitely I ran 2 training sessions for people all over the world. So some were in Germany, Amsterdam, Australia, Canada, United States, actually on how to use Zoom for a conference that's coming up that I'm volunteering with and supporting. And that was a really big high. Everyone is so friendly. We made good relationships and connections. So I love that. Definitely a low is trying to find time working on a different time zone sometimes. There's sometimes things that need to be due at a certain time, and they're not in line with Eastern Standard Time. And that can be really challenging if you're trying to get something done or you don't have a lot of notice to do something. Can definitely have been tired earlier in the beginning of the week. So that wasn't particularly fun.
Yeah, I get that. In a previous role of mine, our head office was in Berlin. So half of my team that I reported to and worked with a lot was Berlin. So sometimes I'd wake up at 6:30 in the morning and already be 3 hours late to messages. And not that that was an issue, but it was being on such a different time zone that you had to be mindful of almost when you were sending messages to not
Yeah.
create urgency that didn't need to be urgency.
Exactly. There's nothing worse than waking up and seeing something was sent at 2:30 in the morning. And you're like, what did I miss? It's now been 5 hours. It's now been 4 hours. What's going on?
Yeah, you need a lot of grace and understanding between a team when you're working cross globally.
Mhm.
And I find the type of world that we've moved into. You mentioned that you launched your business in February 2020. Don't think that I didn't notice that. You launched Alicia, you launched a business within a pandemic. Tell me about that. How did that go?
So when I started, I was really, really lucky. It was just, I was going to wait. I was going to wait to start my business until June. And I was given the opportunity to speak at a panel at Ryerson University out in Toronto and at another arts event, really speaking towards mental health and eating disorders. And at panel, there was kind of a lot of opportunities, and I really didn't want to miss out. I was thinking there's no better opportunity to launch my business when I have a built-in audience where people are going to start hearing my name, are going to start seeing me on social media, are going to have that recognization, are going to be able to recognize me. And that's why I launched in February. And it's really great at first. People were giving me things, people were wanting to volunteer and be supportive. Someone had offered me space in their office to use, all these great, amazing things. So I was ready to go. I was like, this cannot go wrong. I'm getting clients right off the bat. And then we hit March and I had to do refunds. And I didn't know how to do refunds. I had no idea. I was like, what am I supposed to do? How do I put this down on in my accounting? Where am I supposed to go from here? Like, what's the appropriate time to do refunds? And just that was my first point of anxiety of I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to be a failure as a business owner. This is all going to be over. And I started to build it up from there. It took me a few weeks, but I was like, okay, what do people need right now? And I started to run peer support groups online. And I'm so lucky with the turnout. I had people come from Seattle, from Montreal, from Toronto, and all these really great places connecting and supporting one another. And I mean, even at a point, getting other contracts through that just by being, okay, this is what I would need right now. This is the kind of environment I miss, kind of environment I want for myself. Let me create that and see if it can help others too. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, COVID-19 definitely, it was challenging, but now being on the other side, I see there's so much overhead expenses and all of these things I thought I needed to run a business But really, I just needed me and I needed now I need my team that I built and that I have. And I'm just very lucky. That's all I can say.
I know I can feel the emotion from you. You mentioned that you thought you needed a lot of overhead expenses, but what I'm hearing from you is in order to run a successful business and company, you just need to have a really deep mission and why is
Mm.
essentially what I'm getting from you. And the type of company that you're running, I I get that you're servicing the type of clientele that I feel like your clientele just bulked up once the pandemic hit. You think of just our immediate networks. Everyone was pretty comfortable in their roles. Everyone felt like they had a place in the world, and it just goes to show it's like a snow globe. You just shake it up, and it's nothing is the same again. So, how is that affecting your business in a way? Do you find more clientele is coming in? What are you seeing and hearing from your clients right now?
I'm definitely seeing a client that I wasn't expecting. So when I started, I was not expecting to work with families. I was not expecting to be in that area. I was kind of thinking I'll just, work with individuals, didn't particularly have an age range. And it started to be, I was talking to people and they would say, my granddaughter could use this. My daughter could use this. My son, he's going through this right now. And I would be talking to these people through networking. And I was like, okay, I really need to start tailoring my business to families. And what I kind of saw, the more family friendly events I began to put out there, the more the age range began to expand. It was people were bringing their 9-year-old grandmother, and in the same class, we had a 17-year-old. And that was just amazing to me how it doesn't matter. I knew beforehand, like fundamentally, I knew nothing matters your age, position, your class, your wealth, any of it. None of it matters. We're all deserving of mental health treatment. But it just exemplified it for me that what I'm doing is meant to happen during this time when people can't have access. And people who needed access before are still struggling to get access. And I honestly just tried to put out anything I could out there in a way that was effective, something I could do, something I felt comfortable doing, or I could build a team around doing. And it just went from there. And sometimes I feel like I'm in my own little snow globe and things will shake up, or I'll do an event and someone will tell me, like, hey, I know other people who are having this experience. Do you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I do that. This is part of my practice. This is what I do. And it's kind of like a snow globe, but it's also expansive in a way of making that mission of mental health accessible and community oriented. That was really my dream when I started.
That's beautiful. You mentioned that you didn't expect the clientele that you have now to be your clientele. So when you started your business, who did you think your clients were going to be? What did you
I
expect?
So the way the Facebook page was at the beginning, it was mainly kind of people who I knew or people within my age range. So it's very much 20 somethings, millennials. And that's kind of what I pictured at the time. And I was thinking, okay, maybe millennials with young kids, like 1 to 2 years old. I was sort of expecting that, but I definitely wasn't expecting people in my clients who were in their 40s or their 50s because I thought there was a lot of, at the time, I thought, well, maybe I'm not the person who they want to work with. Maybe they're feeling like they want a more traditional approach and just kind of tried to target it that way. But it really didn't come back at me that way. So, yeah, I definitely didn't set out with a target market in mind. I was just kind of looking at who showed up to the events that I was attending and the panels I was speaking at. I presumed that was my niche, but definitely wasn't.
What's the common theme and concern that's bringing your clients to you? What's happening in their lives as a whole that they feel, okay, I really need to go speak to Elisha? What's happening with them?
Typically collective distress. Right now, it's more so they are feeling overwhelmed and it's not at the point where it's something that's diagnosable. So they don't have a diagnosis. They're not being seen by a psychiatrist. They're on the brink of feeling like things need to change. that they need to have a conversation, they want to talk to somebody, they want resources, or they're just feeling curious. And a lot of the times I get a lot of folks who are examining their lives. They're taking time to do that deep examination. Usually it's before or after a diagnosis. I typically don't see clients or anyone when they're in that stage of being seen by a psychiatrist or a social worker. Again, always happy, really, really happy to refer. But I think that's what people know me as the one who's there to help them explore and get curious about using different modalities, about different somatic approaches. And I think I'm very clear about making that known that, it's not psychotherapy, it's peer support. And if that's what you need someone to talk to, you need someone to help you find resources and get support, then that's what I'm here for. And those
And you find the people that are coming to you probably have never in their life thought, oh, I might have like a mental health issue. I might have depression. I might have anxiety. It sounds like the type of people that you work with are just living normal lives and with no concerns per se, but all of a sudden they feel "Ugh, something's off. I might need to go talk to someone soon." And you feel the first step is almost going to someone like yourself, where it's like peer support, where you feel that you give them a little bit of validation and point them in the right direction of where to go next. Would you
yeah,
agree with that?
I do see clients in that capacity for sure. Sometimes I am seeing them when someone in their family has been diagnosed. So typically a child, a spouse, a parent. But most of the time, yeah, it's that kind of situation where they just need to get curious about themselves, about the world, about what they need for them. And together we work on that. And whether that's with me or whether they need someone else on their team or a billion people on their team, it doesn't matter. My job is to help kind of pinpoint them and those resources and having me as someone they can come back to as a person who's going to support them unconditionally.
I feel that that conversation that you have with yourself where you think, I might need to go to therapy. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel the majority of people, there's a lot of shame around that realization. How does someone deal with that?
Yeah, a lot of times I hear folks say, I don't want to go to a psychiatrist. I don't want to get a diagnosis. I definitely don't want to be labeled. And that's absolutely fine. I think it doesn't always have to be therapy. It doesn't always have to be sitting in a psychotherapist's office or a social worker's office. It can be peer support. It can be doing self work. It can be different approaches like martial arts and healing or dance and creativity. It's really about assessing your needs as a person and what's going to help you manage that shame. So sometimes it's just small baby steps. And when we're dealing with things like familial stigma or cultural stigma, I find we're getting less and less. More and more people are beginning to beginning to break that mold and build their own support network. So once you know you have a support network, it's going to help you and understand where that shame and stigma is coming from. It's easier to begin to reach out to more people and do more of the things that you're afraid of doing.
In your opinion, you made a good point where we're just starting to break the mold of the stigma. Do you feel that we're getting closer to breaking the stigma because everyone's talking about it? Are people opening up more? What do you think we've done right so far in terms of breaking stigma as a society?
Yeah. You know what? I think the younger generation being super open. I was speaking to another provider recently, and they were telling me how their client was telling them that TikTok made them feel really open and comfortable to begin talking to their therapist because of all the people making videos of what their therapist would say or conversations that they have in therapy. And I personally don't work with teens specifically, but I know with teenage clients, they're actively out there and talking about it. And I think that's really where it starts. And their parents beginning to break that stigma. So for parents now allowing their teenagers to access those resources, fighting for their teens to have those resources, educating themselves, getting more awareness, that's huge. And although those parents might not have gotten it themselves, they're now breaking some of that generational trauma and stigma because they're seeing the society, they're seeing the direction that they want to push to and what they want to move to.
I love that you say that. We're similar age, I believe.
Yep.
But I love that you say that. Gen Z is so cool.
They're so cool.
They are so I in my full-time job, I work with two Gen Zs. They are so cool. They are so unapologetic. They had what they think and what they're going with. They're not swayed by anything. I'm excited for this generation. And mind you, we're the younger side of millennials. So Gen Z, like I have friends that are technically Gen Z because they're the first bit of Gen Z, but the like the 17, 18-year olds right now, they are so damn cool. I wish I was cool as them.
I
They're
do
so
too.
open about mental health. They're so loud about what they feel and what they think about the world. There's none of this saving face. There's none of this caring what people think. They're even the girl you mentioned TikTok, even like the Gen Z on TikTok, there's none of this makeup and cute outfits. It's literally what you look like on a Saturday morning, and that's what they're showing the world.
Yeah.
I freaking love them.
You're absolutely great. So I was really lucky to have a summer student. My summer student is, yeah, she's Gen Z because she is 17, only just 18. And she was incredible, like such a force in nature. And I mean, like, so in the past, I mean, I think it's different too, because millennials were now kind of taking over some of those leadership roles as an entrepreneur. The work environment that I was creating was absolutely different. I am kind of the boss that it's like, you don't need to take your work home. Yes, it's due this date, but for you to take care of your mental health. And Gen Z is so on board with that versus when I tell a contractor who I've hired out who's part of the older generations, they're like, wait, what? Like, I get to have boundaries. I get to have your support. You're not going to push me or pressure me. And I'm like, absolutely not. Right now, we're doing a competition with the embodiment conference that for my team, one of the things they're getting to do is every time they attend a conference session, which is there to help support their mental health, they get a $10 bonus. And whoever goes to the most, they get $25 for a gift card of their choice, and then $25 for a charity of their choice. And that's the thing. I think that's how we're breaking the stigma, actually giving, as millennials take over, we're now giving Gen Z more of a voice. We're giving all the other generations more of a voice. Be like, hey, we're now talking. We're the people who are your supervisor, then we're actually going to give you an opportunity to do this versus you don't have to take off work for therapy. You can just go. And I think when we start making the thing that you don't particularly need to tell anyone that you're going to therapy, or you don't need to go tell HR that, hey, this is why I need to take off every other week at 3 p.m. We're just doing it. And that's what I kind of want to normalize, I feel.
I love that you say that because that brings me into a really cool example. A girlfriend of mine, she goes to therapy. A lot of my friends go to therapy, but she mentioned that I think she either had a coworker or a supervisor, and she noticed that I think she was trying to schedule a meeting with them, and the person, I don't remember if they were a guy or girl, doesn't matter. The person was like, "Hey, no, I can't meet at that time. I have therapy," and it was like the middle of the day of a work day. And I want to assume it was, well, it doesn't matter if it was a coworker or supervisor, but what I loved about that situation, how she described that to me, it was that normalized it so much. Where it was just like being like, hey, can't meet that time. Like I got a dentist appointment. Yeah. That's how they made it sound. And if there's a supervisor, or if there's a coworker in the office and they go at that with making it normalized, that sets the stage for everyone. You think?
I think so too. That's definitely what I try to do. I'm very clear with my employees. And sometimes when it's relevant, my clients, like every good therapist should be in therapy. I mean, I still, like, although recovered and doing well in my life, I still like having a psychotherapist around for that impartial advice. Yeah, I might go very infrequently, but it's super supportive. And you know that the person who is providing care for you, and even your supervisor, someone who's in charge of your role, someone who you want to be in a place of acceptance. You want them to be in a place of feeling good about themselves so they're able to perform at work, so there's no transference going on. All these people who you want taking care of you in some kind of capacity, you want them to be getting the support they need. And I think it's fundamental of that is it just built, I think it also builds trust. I feel very open and honest when someone asks me, oh, can we meet at 3 this day? And I'm like, oh, actually, I have a therapy appointment. I think it's important that we all work on ourselves. How about we do 5 o'clock? And those things, we got to normalize them just the way we're normalizing people having their babies running around on Zoom or the cat coming out of the screen. All those things we began to normalize in this technology world. If we can adapt to that, I think we can adapt to people going to therapy.
It's almost seems that how do I want to say this? It's almost like we're giving everyone the opportunity to show their humanness, quite frankly. And it's funny, I find in the business world, traditionally, your humanness leave your humanness at the door, you know? You mentioned earlier around the ideas of boundaries in the workplace. What does that look like when it's executed correctly? And what does that look like when someone does not know boundaries in the workplace? I'd love to hear your side of that.
So, have you ever worked at a workplace where they say everyone is family here?
For our listeners, I just eye rolled. I remembered my eye rolls are pretty dramatic, but there's no sound to them.
Yeah. So anyone who has ever worked at a workplace like that, that's a really great red flag that your boundaries are being crossed. When your workplace is beginning to demand you day or night, when they're saying, take that project, oh, you didn't finish it today? Great. Can you get it to me by 8 o'clock tonight? Your work day is supposed to end at 4, and they're not giving any expectations of overtime. Or your manager or your boss is continuously taking out anger on you. Or even when they're saying something like Friday night and saying, hey, we need you in the conference room Monday morning at 8 without giving an explanation. All of those things are toxic and they're very passive. We might think of toxic workplaces as being violent or abusive or verbally abusive. It's not that. And when we have boundaries around that, where we're able to clearly state, hey, these are my working hours. This is when I perform, and this is what I'm going to do to accommodate you. But during these hours, this is the time I spend with my family. Or during these hours, this is the time I practice self-care, so I'm able to be a better employee the next morning. I've said all these things, and sometimes they've been met with mixed reception. And it's okay if your supervisor or your boss doesn't understand it, because that's the time when you can begin to look for an environment that is going to suit you better. And I know right now it's really, really hard, but that again, it's your boundaries are being continuously crossed and continuously saying these things that are validating and supportive of yourself, and you're engaging in your own self-care and making sure your needs are met in your workplace. It can get better. It's just, we can't change other people. So we've all wanted to change our supervisors. I've been there. I'm sure you've been there too. So that's the thing. It's really, that comes from a place of acceptance and putting those words out there to be very clear. Even having an out of office email, you're not checking it at 8, 9 p.m. at night where it says, hi, I work during these hours. You can reach me here. If it's an emergency, maybe have a line or some suggestions as to who they can reach out to, or especially if you're in a client-facing role, you might want to have a 24-hour corporate number that's a head office or a call center. All these things can really make your life a lot easier instead of sometimes stepping over your boundaries, stepping over your time to really ensure that this is a reality for you, that you're keeping and withholding what matters and what counts.
I love the example that you gave of when your workplace is saying, we are a family here. Elisha, until that second, it did not dawn on me that that was a red flag. I'm doing some reflecting as we sit here now. I come from the startup world. So the idea of we are a family, we're a team, we are we go get drinks afterwards. I thought those were all good things. But I'm seeing now that how those boundaries can be blurred. With that example of that you just gave, is there any other that top of mind, and no worries if there's not, but if there's any other top of mind that it might be surprising to us that that should be a red flag to us, similar to the one I just gave?
Yeah. So with the We Are Family one, think about things that kind of come across as mandatory. So the mandatory outings too, whether your team is saying we are a family, we're a team. We may say we're a team. I find we're a team or we work together, we work well together. It's a little bit different than saying we're a family because a family implies that you give everything to it, that you're there 24/7, you're always available, it's unconditional. Workplaces are not meant to be unconditional. When you're also getting asked other expectations, so someone's asking you to cover for them, run their errands, add, add acted a parental figure to them, especially if it's a senior employee who holds power or authority over you. That can really happen. I've been there personally in a work situation where you've now become their parent. So you're the one fetching them lunch. You're now the one who is grabbing something for their wife. All these things that you're like, okay, I want to get this promotion. I need to be supportive of that senior manager or the person who can put me next in line. When we're feeling there's such an intense pressure to perform duties outside of our job that are not relevant to our position, that can be another warning sign. But I really think the family one, the We Are Family, is a big thing to go back to. Because think about those workplace dinners and how they feel mandatory. You don't want to miss out because that's where the gossip comes in. That's where people are changing the schedule. They're talking about the next project. But during that time, you could be spent time at home with a spouse, a loved one, family. If you have a dog or a cat. And I find people say, well, I live by myself anyway. It doesn't really matter. Then I'm intruding on my time. I've told them, like, get a fish, get a pet fish, get something to go home to now. Like, you can't do it for yourself. Find a reason, find other activities in your life that matter, even if it's a hobby, all these things to kind of just overcome it. Just say, no, I have something better to do than engage in workplace gossip or a toxic environment. Because I think most of us know that dinners are usually anything but friendly. They're usually there for a purpose. And whether it's an ulterior purpose that your manager has created, especially the restaurant industry too, where it's kind of like, oh, this is what we do. We always go out for drinks every night. You're now engaging in kind of where substance abuse typically comes up as well if we're now engaging in a behavior that we don't really want to, but it's now normalized by a workplace environment.
Elisha, I feel heavy. There's a lot to this conversation and a lot that you're opening my eyes to. Earlier, you mentioned around the idea of if that's happening with a manager or even a coworker or etc., to say something around like, "Hey, like I have to go home. I won't do that." They're basically voicing the boundary. Elisha, that may seem simple to us. Like we're very out there, loud, confident women, but what do you recommend for the average person that is a little bit more passive and a little bit more, you know where I'm going.
Yeah,
What do you recommend to them?
I really recommend a broken record technique. So with a broken record, when you're quiet, and I didn't really speak for years. It took me a long time to grow into my confidence. I found what was really helpful with repeating myself. So if someone asked me to do something, hey, could you close up? I would say no. Oh no, sorry, I can't. I have X, Y, and Z. And whether it meant that I had to make up excuses and say, oh no, sorry, I can't do this because blah, 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 blah. Most people get tired of hearing the story and eventually they stop asking. And I think when you're an introvert or you're feeling like people drain a lot of your energy and it takes a lot of effort to stand up, sometimes that's helpful. because usually if you say no enough times in a way that it feels good and soothing for your soul, so if you find it easier to say, no, sorry, and you know that you're doing that just because it's easier right now, that's okay. Eventually, it's going to take time and you're going to get there where you're just able to say, no, sorry, this is my reason. This is my determinant. I only work till 5 p.m. if you'd like me to do that. And that's another thing too, offering another option. So if you only work till 5 p.m., you can say, I work till 5 today. I am able to do that tomorrow morning when I come in. And sometimes not being as confrontational or not feeling like you're saying no all the time or feeling inauthentic to yourself can really be helpful and beneficial into getting to that point where you're really clearly expressing your boundaries.
That's a lot of great ideas. I find with parents, they usually have the excuse, not excuse, but they usually have to get somewhere like I would pick up the kid like at this exact time. So they have a strict boundary of I'd be out of the office by this time. And then because I'm sure a lot of my listeners are maybe single women, men in the workforce. One thing that I've learned from a lot of my girlfriends that worked who are always in a similar situation is that pre-pandemic, they used to book a class pass, specifically a class pass, like work at class, maybe around 6 or 5:30 or whatever. Because the idea was if you say, oh, I'm going to the gym at 5:30, there was a little bit of a leeway, but everyone knew that if you didn't get to that class pass class at this time, or you tried to cancel, you had to pay money. There was almost that societal like grace where
Yeah.
especially if you have like a woman manager, if she heard you have a class pass work at class at 6 p.m., like she's like, get out the door. Like, I don't want you paying for missing a class.
Yeah.
So I, I don't know if this is helpful, but having something, I like what you said around non-confrontational, around hey, I won't be able to get that to you by this time, but I can do it this time and this time. So it's like, hey, I'm not saying no to what you're asking. It's just like, it's not going to happen right now. But I like the idea of being non-confrontational because I find being confrontational in life is not going to get you very far. I learned that the hard way, but especially not in the workforce.
Yeah. I think you do always need to give options because if you're
Mm.
always saying there's some things that are just there's something like things that are outside of your job description, but if it is in your job description that you complete, I don't know, that you can complete so many reports per week, and part of your job is to make sure that they're in Friday and one gets added on extra. And let's say it's like Friday at 3:30, you might be able to say, okay, I'm going to get what you might be able to say to your boss, I'm going to do what I can until I finish at 5 o'clock today. And I'm able to work an hour tomorrow to get that done for you. And that might be a way of kind of mitigating the situation in a way that's favorable for you and is also going to be favorable for your employer. And they might come back and negotiate and say, well, is there any way you can do it an hour tonight? And that's your choice at that point is whether you say yes or no to that.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I'm learning that within the workforce to give people options. If someone's asking you something, at least push it back and be like, give them a couple options. And also always try to find a win-win. We're all humans. We all want to both play on the playground, you know? So sometimes it's hard working and collaborating with other adults. The question I have for you is you were not always doing this work. So what were you doing before and how did you get into this type of work?
Yikes. That's not a
Should we save that for another podcast?
No, I was working. So my background is in tourism and hospitality management. I have a diploma in tourism operations management, and then I went back to school for international hospitality management out in Prince Edward Island. And part of what happened is I was now in a new place. I didn't really have that many connections, and it's small. It's really, really small. And I know it looks small. You're from Canada, you colored it in on a map. You know it's hard to get there with a crayon. No, it is. It's tiny.
loved how you just described that because that is perfect.
So I'm so glad. It's like one of my childhood perfectionist struggles, but I I don't think I realized how difficult it would be to get a job, how difficult it would be to get a cooperative education experience. So I began to have experiences in the restaurant industry and in the hotel industry, but they were always very short term, kind of ones that the instructor, the program manager had picked out and assigned. So I was set there, but at the same time, I needed a job that was going to provide income because I had residency to pay. I had obviously all those other expenses, phone bill, food, all that jazz. And I ended up working in nonprofit. Before I had a lot of experience, spent a lot of kind of volunteer work, directing programs, working in like ambassadorships kind of thing. I ended up working at Heart and Stroke. And I learned so much. And it was an amazing experience where I worked there, the term was over, they hired me back and did a lot of kind of the fundraising, administrative side of things. And it was amazing to just begin to talk to survivors, get to know people's stories, and really, really learn how to listen and how to learn what's best for people as a whole. And that's kind of where I started to think, oh, maybe hospitality, maybe it's not right for me. Maybe tourism isn't right for me. The only reason why I ever got into this was because I wanted to help people. But with tourism and with nonprofits, I found there's so much flexibility in terms of scheduling. You don't really know when you're going to be hired back. And at that time, I was like, oh, I feel it's hard. It's hard to manage money the best you possibly can. If you don't have something that's stable coming in, you're not really sure when your next paycheck is going to be, and you're just waiting for that call for the next contract. It definitely anxiety producing. So I ended up taking a job when I came back to Ontario in finance as a financial specialist. And that was a really interesting experience because I was working by myself. It was during a very difficult transition with the company, and my previous mental illness that I've been working on and managing, it really came up for me. It was just, I needed that time off to go to therapy at a hospital 3 days a week and relearn a lot of skills that I missed out on and get myself together. I slowly had to pick up the pieces of my whole life. I was living in a toxic work environment. I was paying rent. It was extraordinary. I ended up working 4 jobs at that time. One of the jobs I was doing was trying to figure out how I wanted to get back into the nonprofit sector, how I wanted to be happy again. And with unpaid, kind of an unpaid internship at Family Resource Center. And I loved it. And I picked up everything I could and learned from that experience. And I ended up taking some time off to learn what I know now and work on my own mental health enough that I was able to support others. And kind of from there began to sort of session, figure out what my personality, whether the provider, what my approach would be, what holistic aspects I wanted to include, and really just work from there. And it really started was because I just remember feeling so lost and confused at work and that factor of instability. And I really knew I wanted to work on something that I could really be passionate about and throw myself into just the same way I felt about nonprofit. So I created a social enterprise because I think that's what, even when I was choosing tourism as my major and I was 17, I really didn't know much better. I just knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know. It took me a long time to get there to figure out how I wanted to help people and what experiences I wanted to use.
You mentioned the phrase, I took time off multiple times in your story then.
Mhm.
I find the type of world we're in right now is majority of people are used to working for their life. A lot of people are afraid to take an extra week off sometimes, even if it's paid. Do you know how many people in the world have a paid leave and don't use it? Oh, it's insane. But where I'm going with this question is we are in a time this year that so many people are finding themselves with time off, but not chosen. And I don't think they know what to do with it. So, talk to me about some of the positives of time off and how someone should use that time effectively.
So I was what I really like to call workaholic. Like I was obsessed with going to work. I needed to be at work. That's all I wanted to do. And that's kind of how I ended up working for a job because I didn't understand the concept of time off. I really didn't. I knew what time off was if it had a purpose. And what I found in taking time off to rediscover what I wanted and because I really honestly always fundamentally believed everything is figure outable. And I know that's not a word, but it's a word that is true for me and my
That's
experience.
Marie Forleo's book. Have you read it?
I have not.
It's good. Listen to
Okay.
it, please. Continue. Sorry.
I definitely will. Yeah, so I just had that feeling and I knew, but taking time off to me, it did not mean not working. I was working on myself. I was going to therapy like 3 to 4 days a week. I was going to doctor's appointments. I was reading books. I was taking courses. I was learning new things. I was getting outside more. I was learning meditation. I was learning yoga. I was learning Pilates. I was learning all these really essential skills that I wouldn't have been able to learn while I was in a place where my mind and the capacity that I had in energy just couldn't expand anymore. So that's really the myth I think people need to break is approaching things with curiosity and thinking, okay, it's time off. And how do I want that to look? So how do I want that to look beyond having time to sit on the couch, play with my kids, walk my dog, be with my family? How do you want it to look? What are the things that you want to grow from? So what are some of the goals you put on the back shelf for 2 or 3 years? Can you bring them out? Are the goals still relevant to you? Is there a part of your life that you really want to change? Maybe it's building a stronger relationship. Maybe it's being more knowledgeable about a certain topic. We can use our time off for those things that really gratify us and make us grateful for our life.
You mentioned work on myself. What does that mean? Do I like if I was to Google right now, how do I work on myself? What's Google going to tell me to do? It seems so, Alicia, it seems so far out there. We hear of people being like, oh, and I'm not making fun of anyone.
Mhm.
I've done this myself, but I'm looking at it from an overhead view. We look at these people and they're like, oh, I just worked on myself and I manifested and I journaled every morning and I meditate an hour a day. Alicia, I'm exhausted just saying that sentence.
Thank you.
What is it, right? Tell me, talk to me to like the average person. You, you are stressed from your job. You just got laid off. You wake up the next morning and you aren't going to your 9 to 5. You sit there. I think people will actually lose their mind because they don't actually know what to do with their time. Where do I begin? Do I sit there and scroll through Instagram? Do I watch Netflix all day? What do I do? What does work on myself mean?
So work on yourself. Like that is fine.
Sorry, Alicia, I guess I'm passionate about this.
No, okay, because I am too. I think work on ourselves. Do this for a few days. That Netflix, Instagram scrolling, that endless loop been there. And you don't even realize that all of a sudden you've watched 10 seasons of a show and it's now over. I get it. I've done it.
Me 3 months into the pandemic.
Right. And you don't realize you're doing it and you kind of begin to forget about yourself. And although that's okay for a few days, eventually you're going to have to get up and get out the door. And I know get out the door is like a very far off phrase because we shouldn't really be going anywhere right now during pandemic time. But getting up and doing something, even if it's one small thing. So if you've been sitting on the couch watching Netflix for 3 days, maybe today's the day you wake up, you have a shower, and you cut up some fruit and you make pancakes and you phone a friend. Maybe the next day, instead of that, you do the same thing again, except this time you do a mini yoga practice or you put on a little yoga video. And maybe it's the next day, you do those two things again. And it's after a yoga practice, you take some time to go on a walk and meditate, or you take some time to begin a journal. And each day you just add one little thing. So just like how your work life is consumed with so many things, whether it's emails, it's phone calls, it's reports, it's managing, it's all these possible things that it can be. You can make your own time off the same way with a lot of things in it, except things that bring you joy. I would start if that journaling meditate thing sounds like a chore, because trust me, there's so many myths and it's not for everyone. It might be I sit outside of my porch and I read a book, and it could be any book. And then one week you might say, okay, I've read the books that I really like to read. Maybe I'll now begin to expand my mind and look at something that's more self-help, or talks about emotions, or talks about financial freedom, or talks about entrepreneurship. Because once you begin with the things you love, you do actually begin to manifest more of it. And when we're doing that meditation journaling thing by default, it's always like gripping on the steering wheel, right as you know you're going to be in an accident, like truck's coming in front of you at your pale face, and you're just gripping there. And you're just gripping. And that's the thing, if we're just gripping onto meditation and journaling, because society says this is what's good for you, we're not going to be as effective with our time off. It's going to start to feel like work. And we don't want it to feel like work. We want it to feel like gratitude and joy and laughter and all the things that bring us pleasure. And sometimes that takes mastery to relearn how to do that.
I find we're all so programmed into waking up, answering the emails, and waiting for someone else to tell us what to do all day. And then we get a day or two or a week or 6 months to ourselves, given the times we're in. And we're not used to choosing what to do with our lives. Well, we're both women. You think of a lot of young moms who are juggling jobs, social lives, kids, husband, etc. There's always people pulling at them. So I hear lots of stories of when new moms or moms in general, especially young kids, finally get a day to themselves. They think, honestly, just lock me in a room with a glass of wine and I might just cry. And they're all like, I just need to. They always make a joke like, I just need to be able to use the bathroom alone. I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people, and even regardless of moms, I don't think a lot of people know what the hell to do when they have a full day in front of them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how big of a present and joy that is. And I think, and I'm saying this with a lot of compassion, but I find a lot of people that I've seen, even in Toronto, that have been laid off or furloughed. I don't know if they're taking advantage of this time off right now.
Yeah. And it's hard to take the advantage of the time off is when we don't have something else we're working toward. And when we're so used to working, so at work, you have goals, whether those are sales targets, whether that's finish this manuscript by this time, or you have this many patients, you have this many clients that you need to see by the end of the day today. And without threat, I think people get relaxed. Their system decompresses. And it's, yes, we can decompress our system. And it's important that we have a goal in mind. So we're not feeling aimless. So we're not feeling disappointed, upset, angry, frustrated, all these big feelings that can come up. So I think, yeah, not everyone has the capacity or has the knowledge of how to goal set. We might have had all those goals done before us, whether with our parents, our spouse, higher education, our workplace. So when we get used to setting a goal for the first time, or even engaging in a pleasurable activity, does require, I'm going to go back to that word again. I think it's all about mastery. You got to set those little things. And that's the thing. Some people might not know that that's what they need. And I don't want to say it's hard when you haven't been taught that. I feel like we can't throw blame at other people for not knowing. It's just nobody really knows unless you've had experiences where you've learned that or have been taught that within your childhood. That is obviously going to make for more adept adults who are able to manage these situations a little bit better. But we really don't learn it. I'm trying to think of a point in our life where we should be learning it, or where we can't. There's lots of opportunities where we can learn it within our life. It just doesn't happen for everyone in that.
we've talked a lot about toxic workplaces and boundaries, etc. I don't know if you have an experience in your own life, but when does it get to the point where you're like, ugh, I'm in a really toxic culture? And Alicia, how do you get out of that? You don't just pick up the phone one day and you're like, I'm just going to move to a new job. Like, if you're in that situation, what would you recommend people doing?
Careful planning. I think that's the biggest thing is people are really inclined to either be really reactive and quit the job, say no, leave, and not have anything else in plan. Or other people decide to stay because it's too hard, it's too fearful. I would get really specific as to what you don't like in your current workplace. So maybe it's your boss, maybe it's that we are family culture, maybe it's the workload, maybe it's the environment, isolation, all of those things. And then look for what you want. So start going on people's website, start reading some of the reviews of other employees. I find, yes, okay, they might not always be correct, and they're usually a very small sample of employees. It does give you some insight. I would look at what their offices look like. Are they in a city? Are they all cubicles? So if your issue before was you felt really isolated at work, you might look for a workplace that uses open concept or has lots of team meetings or has an open door policy. Some of these things that you know are going to help you with that feelings of isolation. So whatever those feelings are that you're having at work, look at those and then look for solutions as to what you want. And when you're going after a workplace, when you're applying, you shouldn't just be applying everywhere. Although that's kind of what we're told is when we're looking for a job, you gotta bang on every door. You gotta bang on the doors that are right for you. Because if you get that job and you're just gonna move into another unhappy place, you're gonna feel the same all over again, and it's just gonna become a spiral. And it's a big spiral because you can get really sucked into it, into thinking the next one's gonna be better. I'm gonna feel less disappointed, less isolated, less upset. And we begin to think there's something wrong with us. And we were thinking there's something wrong with us. We're living our life with shame. We might be more apologetic. We might not be able to keep our boundaries. And I'm sure you can see where this kind of backtracks us to where we started talking about is all these things interlay with each other. So it's careful planning, looking at your feelings, looking at how you want to resolve that, and then looking at your goals. So looking at the things that you want to grow. So what do you need in your environment to grow? What do you need to feel successful in your workplace? And what kind of job opportunity do you feel is your next best career move? And it may be staying on the same level. You don't have to level up, even though that's what society tells you to do. You don't have to go from, if you're a payroll clerk now, you don't have to go to be payroll manager. You can still be a payroll clerk. You can be a payroll clerk somewhere else. You don't need to validate that. And when you quit, a lot of folks find it really such a relief to go to HR or have that final expression. I do always recommend, you kind of want that reference just in case, and that grace period of saying, hey, I'm leaving. I found a position at X, Y, and Z. I'll be leaving in 2 weeks. I'm here to support you in any way I can. And then kind of having a more confidential conversation with HR as to some of the things that you found were challenging and difficult. And whether you've had that conversation with HR in the past or you repeating yourself to them, or it could be all new information if you've never felt comfortable doing this, even a letter, something that is allowing you to get some relief from the situation. And HR might not always give you the response that you want when you feel that you deserve, but at least for your sake, it's out there and you might have made a change within your workplace environment. You can also go the other route of accepting it. You can accept that these people are who they are, and you don't have to be in that environment anymore. You're staying true to your boundaries. So you can go either way. It really just depends on your personality and what kind of dynamic your workplace environment is as a whole.
I know I can keep you all day, but I have a couple more questions.
Go for it.
One question that I do have is, What are the signs and symptoms that someone has let a toxic work environment go too long?
Mhm.
And the reason I ask this, again, I always go back to my immediate network. We are the type of women that can handle a lot. And sometimes that's a fault of ours. So I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
When it turns into transference, so when it starts affecting your home life, when it starts affecting your physical health, your mental health. So if all of a sudden you're feeling frequent feelings of stress and all of a sudden you're getting a cold every 2 weeks, big sign. I knew so many women, especially, who are like, oh, I get sick a lot. Oh, you talk about the stress levels. It's usually, oh, well, my work is stressful or this is my job. So it's no surprise I'm always, that is definitely a sign. When it starts affecting your family life, so you're spending less time with your spouse, your children, other significant relationships in your life, or even are feeling withdrawn or angry within your relationship, that could be a huge marker of feeling consumed by your job, continuously feeling anxious about going to work or even having panic attacks before or after work, even during the day as well. Huge markers. Typically, for having panic attacks, it might be at the point that we've let things just get a little bit too far. Typically, the transference aspects usually come a little bit before those panic attacks. Yet that's not to say they can happen interchangeably. Yeah, I would say
And
those are the three.
yeah, that's fantastic. You're providing me with so much insight and you're very knowledgeable, Alicia. And the question I have now, because I'm genuinely curious, okay, I'm at that point. I'm having panic attacks before work, or it's affecting my relationships, or I'm just consumed with it. So what do I do next? Do I go straight to therapy? Do I go to peer support? Like, what is the next step that I would take?
Yeah. So you some workplaces do have an employee assistance program that you can access privately. And that's not to say all workplaces do. A lot of startup cultures won't. The first thing you'll want to do at that point is build your own support network. So begin letting those in your life who matter, whether that's family, friends, neighbors, other care providers in your life. So things like family doctors, big, big role, big support. And letting them know, hey, this is what's going on for me. I'm having panic attacks at work. Can you help me? Or can you help me find ways to feel better? And a lot of that time, you might get that friend who's like, call me if you're having a panic attack and I'll help talk you through. Or I've tried this, but try these breathing techniques together. And with panic attacks and anxiety, it really starts with learning tools. And you can choose how you want to learn those tools. Sometimes family doctors' offices have those resources. You can do it independently through books, through learning, through online courses, through online groups. Peer support's a great option for speaking about managing panic attacks. Therapy as well. Some folks really find relief in like either psychotherapy or psychodynamic approaches, or even if it's at a point where it's really interrupting your life, psychiatry, speaking about medication, speaking about other alternative solutions to help kind of manage panic attacks daily. But at that same time, you should be working on finding a solution to getting out of that situation. So whether that means quitting, if that's financially feasible, if that's not going to cause any distress in your life. So sometimes I get it. Quitting can be more stressful than staying there. So it's about doing a pros and cons list at that point too, and making sure if you quit, you have the family support, you have the friend support, you have the financial support that you're going to need to if you can't get a job for 3 months or 2 months, looking at all those things as well. So that's why I always think building your support network is huge.
And it sounds like what you're saying, which you've alluded to earlier, is take calculated risk.
Mhm.
Yeah, we are in a very uncertain year. And quite honestly, this year is no different than any other year in terms of there's always uncertainty with any job, regardless of whether it's your own business, whether you're working for someone else. Like, you know both sides. The question I have to ask is, you mentioned a lot of support networks and peer support and therapy, but when we talk generally Canada, US, what are the actual resources they can go to? Can you name drop some websites or programs? Where do I go? Like, I actually have no idea. And Alicia, to be quite honestly, I've never been to therapy in my life. If I want to go to therapy today, Alicia, I don't even have a family doctor in Toronto. I don't even know how to get one. This is a whole issue in itself. This is a me problem. But when it comes to therapy, I quite frankly don't know what I would do. Do I type in therapist in Toronto? Like, walk me through it. I truly don't know.
Yeah. So in Toronto specifically, I mean, CAMH is usually your best resource, but also across Canada, we have Canadian Mental Health Association. And Canadian Mental Health Associations, they usually have a free counselor available. They're not one that you can see regularly, but typically a drop-in session. And that's usually a great place to get started because they'll have more resources for your community. So things like family doctors, things like social workers, things like other mental health team providers. There's also, US have them as well, family healthcare team. So looking for individuals who can do a multidisciplinary approach. And biggest thing I think with finding a therapist is something I hear so often is, oh, I picked my therapist because they were the first name that came up. They had the highest rating. Look at what they do. So you can type in therapist in Toronto. If you're in New York, you can type in therapist in New York, wherever you are in the world. You can type that in. And what I would recommend doing is looking at their website. And when you look at their website, you want to look at their approaches. So research their approach. So if I saw a therapist who said their approach was solution-focused based therapy, I might look up solution-focused based therapy, and I would probably find Elliot Connie, who's one of the founders there, and I would watch some of his videos and say, okay, I think I like this therapy. I think this is for me. I'm going to call this therapist or I'm going to email and I'm going to get a 15-minute phone call with them to find out if they're able to help me. And that's the thing about any therapist who is practicing in an area, you might also want to look at what they treat. So if it's not listed on their website, you might ask questions such as, do you work with teens? Do you work with adults? What area you're focused? Some therapists prefer to work with seniors. Some work with young adults. Some work with anyone. And that's really what you want to be mindful of. They may say, just with any business, we have ideal clients. Therapists and providers do as well. They may be specified and have done extensive research in depression or anxiety, or their specialty might be in trauma or personality disorders. You really want to make sure you're looking that up. And if you're up to it, even checking out if they publish any research on topics that are relevant to you as well. Typically, you'll get a lot from that 15-minute phone call. And if that's not your person and you know right off the bat, you have every right to say no. And even in that first session, the first few sessions, and you've been 4 times, and I hear this so often, as I've already gone 4 times, I don't really want to start over, but they're not a good fit. Start over because you're now putting money out there and you're spending time of your own to further contribute to a toxic relationship. And your therapeutic relationship, yes, they're here to support you in the most positive and most unconditional way that they can. But if you're not getting anything out of that, there's no point of staying. And therapists are used to it. You're not going to hurt their feelings. They're going to be okay. They still have their practice. You leaving isn't going to affect your life much, their lives much. It's going to affect your life a whole lot by making choices and giving yourself some of that control to continue to experiment. If you find therapy is not right for you, you might try peer support. You might try a holistic approach. You might try a group therapy program or a peer support program. You have the option to leave. And insurance, of course, is an issue, but anything that could be recommended or referred by your family doctor, like +1 for that. I know in the US, it's a whole different story and the challenges are harder. But there are resources. There are community organizations. There are nonprofits. that are equally doing the same work that we are in Canada too.
And now you mentioned this 15-minute call, and if this is only for Canada, is that usually a free consultation? Kind of feel someone
Typically,
out?
every therapist who I've spoken with, either in my own journey or ones that I refer folks to, are usually doing some kind of a 15-minute pre-call. In the States as well, there's quite a few who I've spoken to in New York and out in Oregon and out in California who are doing 15, 20-minute calls. And you can ask if you don't see it on their website, make a call, make an email, and ask. Because most often they're more likely to give you 15 minutes of their time for a potential client or for someone who needs support. Because I don't think anyone gets into this field without really wanting to do the best by people. And it's part of their job too.
I would agree with that. It's not an easy job. It's freaking emotionally exhausting. So you gotta want to do it. And it got to be really what you're made for. Alicia, I have one more question for you. Actually, I kind of lost it. I'm gonna have to edit that out now. Between you and me. Oh, what the hell? I'm just gonna ask. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask. So, Alicia, I have one more question for you. Given all of the work, and we need to have you on another time because we haven't really heard anything about your story. We've just the reason why you're so educated and knowledgeable on the topic is obviously to do with a lot of your life experience. So we'll have you on again to get through that. But the question I have for you is, given the type of world that we're living in, the types of workplace uncertainty and stress and financial stress that everyone's happening, is there anything that you kind of want to leave the listener with that would make them feel a little bit more relieved in their everyday life? I know, sorry.
I think the biggest thing that I've been saying to everyone right now is it's hard and you can do hard. The biggest thing you can do in your life is start removing some of those things that you say to yourself. So there should, never, always. The big words that are ultimatums that really keep you stuck. So if you think you always have to show up for work, you always have to perform in a certain way. You can never say no. All these things. What if you just tried for just a moment to remove those never, those always, the shoulds, and replacing it with an and? And that's a skill in itself. That's the whole therapeutic technique. And it's relevant for especially this area in workplace environment because our self-talk is usually the thing that's keeping us stuck within those environments when you can move in a life that's more free, that's more fulfilling. It brings you more joy and gratitude. And it's okay if you need help to get there and if it takes some time.
Alicia, that's powerful. Everything that you just said resonates with me. And even the conversations I had with my close girlfriends, I hear those words, should, always, never, that revolve around work a lot. So as you mentioned, that's a skill, that's a muscle that everyone would have to build, trying to remove those words and phrases from their vocabulary. So, Alicia, you are extremely talented and knowledgeable in everything that you do in your field. And it's very clear that you have a passion for what you do and the work that you do and the types of people that you talk to. All that being said, please, please shamelessly promote yourself. Where can we find you? And tell us anything that you can offer us.
Yeah. So, okay. We are on Instagram and Facebook at EAG Innovation. We are also on TikTok for that Gen Z millennial audience, which has been fantastic so far. We're also at EAG Innovation there. We do have I have a podcast as well. We're on YouTube right now. We're coming out with audio in January 2021. Right now on YouTube, our channel is at EAG Innovation. And we are talking all things mental health. So we have a lot of topics, whether you're looking to learn more about toxic workplaces, neurodivergent children, aspects of mental health in the media, all the way up to parenting topics. We're definitely here to help support with that through the podcast. We do have a 30-minute call that you can book. So our 30-minute calls are an educational consult. So if there is something you're going through at the moment that you want more resources on, that you want more support in, we are happy to help. That call will always be with myself. When that's something we give away, there's no obligation to make a payment or compensate for that in any way. It's really just making sure you're connected with the right resources and the right people that you need. Um, in regards to offerings in the month of November, we have journaling workshops every Saturday, and they begin with the word way back into. So we're going to be helping you find your way back into things like love, dream, childhood, all these exciting and big topics. So if you're looking for more peer support, community-based environment, those tickets are going to be up on Eventbrite by the time this airs. Those are going to be $9.99 Canadian a person, and I'm very happy to offer a discount for new followers. Just type in EAG 2020, and you'll get 10% off of that as well.
I appreciate that, Elisha. So I'm obviously going to put a huge paragraph within the show notes for anyone that did not catch that. I will put, if you're interested in getting a consultation from Elisha, just to, as she mentioned, just get some peer support. If anyone knows the resources that you can get, it's her. So you can do that quick 30-minute free call with Elisha, and I'll provide your contact information in the show notes, as well as every other resource and everywhere else we can stock you. Elisha, it sounds like you're soon going to need to hire a full-on marketing team is what I'm gathering.
Yeah, we just got someone to do some branding for something we're very excited about in December that I can't quite announce yet, but we're getting there. It's been so great to kind of have people come on board, and everyone we've hired has some lived experience with mental health or knowledge about the topic. So it's been really great to work with people, even in the marketing field, who are really beginning to understand and really incorporate mental health into their work. And there's so many folks out there who are just looking to do good by social enterprises, which has been fantastic. Millennials and Gen Z just showing up for one another.
Taking over the world one day at a time.
Yeah.
Truly. Well, Elisha, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know if I ever need, I do every day, I need resources and support all the time, but now I know exactly who to come to, who will give me the answers and show me the way.
I'm so glad, and I hope your audience as well feels the same way, and I'm glad to be a service. That's what I'm here for.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of nuggets to take out of this talk for sure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.